My name is Amy Eng. I'm a playwright, originally from Hong Kong, and now I'm based in London. So Katie Posner directed my last play, which was on at the Kiln Theatre, and it was a co-production between Kiln and Paines Plough. So yes, that's obviously really meaningful. What made me to be a writer? Well, that's a really compelling question. I heard a voice from heaven, and I didn't find it. I don't know. I think so. I grew up in Hong Kong, where there wasn't that much, kind of Western naturalistic theatre. There was a lot of Cantonese opera, but one summer, my mom didn't know what to do with me, and so there was like a drama class close to where we lived, and it was led by a director called James Mark, whom I later found out is one of the more influential directors in Hong Kong, and he had a company called High Noon, which the mission was to bring kind of Western, like great Western classics in Chinese translation. So that included Tennessee Williams, included Equus, and so I was only like 14, and then so he had a production that summer of Equus, and so for some reason, like, I persuaded two of my friends to come along, and Equus obviously has like that scene of like a naked man, and none of us had ever seen a naked man before, and I think we were like completely stunned into silence. And so like I remember walking back with my friends from the theater to the subway station. It was a good 10-minute walk, and we were like completely silent. And I mean, like say, and it wasn't just that, it was just the power of the story, and then I guess the rawness of the story. Like, I'd never seen anything like that. So I think I was just kind of like, wow, I think I just became an addict after that. Like, I was just seeking it out like anywhere I could in Hong Kong. There was a Hong Kong Arts Festival every year where they brought productions from all over the world, and so I watched a lot of that, and I just then when I later left Hong Kong to go first to the States and then to here to the UK. I think I was at uni. I didn't do any drama at all because it didn't feel like it was for me. And like now looking back, I'm like, I wonder why I felt that. Then I was like, it's because everybody was white, so like I ended up doing a lot of classical music because there were loads of like East Asians there, but like not in drama. But it was like a secret vice, like I'd go, by myself to watch all the productions, but like kind of never dared reach out. But then I became a historian, but when I was on maternity leave with my first child, like I've been writing plays in secret, and then I just went to the Royal Court, and they invited me onto their writer's course, and I never went back to academia. So yeah, sorry, that's a really long-winded way to go from like naked man to like maternity leave. Yeah. I think I'd always harbored, ever since, watching Equus, I'd always harbored a secret desire to be a playwright, especially because this director on my drama course in Hong Kong was quite involved in setting up the first drama school in Hong Kong, and he was very much like, oh, this is actually a viable career path. And of course I was like, yeah, whatever. And it's still not a viable career path in Hong Kong. Yeah, it's just not big enough a scene. But I just never thought it was. I mean, I remember when Amadeus first came out, my mom took me to go watch it. I think she thought it would be educational, and she like didn't know what she was getting into. And at the end, she kind of turned to me and hissed and said, this is what's going to happen to you if you're an artist. You're going to end up in a mass grave. And I was like, oh my God. I guess she must have known that, like, even, at that time that I, like, was flirting with this idea, or that I was secretly harboring this desire. So I always felt that doing a PhD and becoming, like, aiming for a professorship at a university was kind of like a halfway house between what I really wanted and what she really wanted for me, which was a respectable career. So, and then, I mean, I've always loved history. And so I thought that writing history would be like writing stories. But, academic history is really a different beast. And I think I was just really immensely frustrated. I mean, not so much with history itself, I guess, with how academia is set up. So yeah, that's why I think I've been writing all along, and just the kind of first little opening. It wasn't like the Royal Court were like, that's an amazing play, we're going to produce it. It was more like, yeah, to come join our writers' cause. But like on the back of that, I was just like, I'm never going back. Yeah. And also, like I couldn't realistically go back because I had a baby, and it's not like, academia is not well paid enough, to like, get a nanny and go back full time. So this is terrible. Like I felt like I was using my child as an excuse to like actually, switch careers. Right at the beginning, where I'm just like conceiving the idea and outlining, and it's like, first draft deadline is kind of safely on the horizon and not like imminent the next day. I mean, that's my favorite part. Then I used to go walking the dog, and then I try to get in like 4 hours of just doodling in my notebook. So like I always do everything up to first draft, like longhand with a fountain pen and and a notebook, because it just kind of slows down your metabolism. Like a computer's too fast. And I used to go swimming when we lived close to the pool. Now I don't. I live close to the Thames, but I also discovered a website called sewage.co.uk, which is like, it measures the levels of sewage in the river, so I don't go swimming in the Thames. I guess I just walk along it, and I feel like I'm stalking an idea, but I'm trying to like catch it from like the corner of my eye. So that's kind of like my ideal writing day. Like I have 4 hours of doing this, and then kind of there's the end of the school day, the kids come back, and I do all my admin stuff, like emails and invoices and like writing pitches for TV, because that's, how like we all survive, I suppose, from TV money. Yeah. And so that's kind of, the beginning of a play kind of writing day. And then of course, when it gets crazy, when like there's, people shouting in my inbox, like, where's the draft? Then I just get up. I don't even like change out of my pajamas. I just stay in bed all day and like pound out a draft. And and it just, I sometimes stay up all night just doing it, because I like, if I have a deadline imminent, I really don't like being interrupted. And like the days, apart from those 4 hours in the morning, but then the rest of the day is really interrupted with like emails and the kids and everything. So like then at night, it's kind of like, and like my second golden time. So, but I'm not recommending it to anybody. Like 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. is not really a sustainable lifestyle. But I actually quite like doing it for like a few days, just to get that the final push, like the first draft, over the hump. Yeah. So and then of course, when it's closer to production, then or rehearsals, then it's like, then there is just no writing time. It's just, oh yeah, there is, like, but it's like frantically redrafting, and that just feels like firefighting. So it's actually too much of that. So, but yeah, I've discovered over the years that I'm quite good at pitching an idea. I'm quite good in a meeting at sensing like what the other person really wants, and I pitch something to them, and they're like, oh, that's wonderful. And then I come back home and I realize that I don't actually know whether or not I want to, like, what aspect of that subject matter really intrigues me. And it takes me a long time to find out, because I feel like, there's like me as a citizen of the world, and, and there are like certain things that I want to like wax indignant about, like, immigration or whatever, like abortion, all that. But I actually need to find out what I as a writer want. Yeah, so I once read Atto Fugard said it was like, it's kind of like fishing, like you kind of just know the general vicinity of like where you want to fish, but then it takes a long time for like the fishing line to wriggle. And so I'm mixing metaphors. So, yeah. So I also feel like I can't force it. I can't come at it directly. Like I'm writing, like, I fill up, like, I buy like 30 Muji notebooks at once, and I just fill up notebook after notebook, and I know I'm writing around the idea, and I'm trying to discover like the heat of the idea. And so usually what comes out at the end is really different from what I pitched. It is kind of the same general thing. So I think that's what I mean. Like after my first play, which was like on like at the Finborough, you know, 50 seater, like as fringe as you get, there was like, I was suddenly, you know, I actually got more meetings with TV companies after that than theatres, which is really discouraging. And I was invited on to the BBC drama room. And so like all of a sudden, like, you know, I was writing pitches, and, you know, you get paid for each pitch, you know, like a few £100 for each pitch. And if it gets a treatment, it's like over 1,000. And so like that for a while, I think for a long time, that was basically how I was making it financially work. And then I've written a couple of episodes for TV, and it's only 20% of my work, but it's really 80% of my income. It's cliche thing, it's the liveness of it, and it's also, I kind of feel like watching theatre is like watching like someone's destiny or fate unfolding before your eyes. You know, you see them step by step going towards a conclusion that sometimes you can foresee and sometimes you can't, but it's it just, I mean, the weight of it, I guess. And I mean, I like comedy too. It's not like I don't mean like the weight of it as in like tragedy, but like that every action is so consequential, and it feels more real than real life, you know, and more real than like anything on screen, because there's somebody, and that there's this sense of danger, you know, because it's live and anything can happen. I don't just mean the danger, like, you know, the actor might forget their lines, or like, you know, the set might crash on them, though, you know, that happens too. But it's more that, I guess it's an illusion, because, you know, obviously they're not going to go like ad lib and improvise like a completely different ending. But I mean, I think for me, the best theatre is you feel at any moment that it could go off in any direction, and that every step, every choice that they make will, the stakes would be so high, and they would have such huge consequences for the rest of their lives. So I guess that's what I really love about it. And I don't feel that in other mediums. Sometimes it's just the fear, you know, I realize a lot of writer's block is just fear that, because, you know, many times you're writing I mean, actually all my plays are intensely personal, even though they don't look it. I mean, because I usually don't, you know, I don't write about my life, you know, because I don't think my life is that interesting. I'm you know, I would never write a like confessional play that you take up to the Edinburgh Fringe for one woman show. But actually every play is so intensely personal. So it just feels at some point you're like, I'm giving away too much. I'm revealing too much of myself, you know. It's like, you know, breaking family taboos, or, you know, like just, you know, your worst secrets, you know. So I guess there's part of that that's so, you know, at every project there's like always a block, and you really have to push through it. But there's also this other kind of writer's block when, you know, you're like throwing everything at the project, at the play, and it just won't yield. And then I realize that it's because I'm on the wrong path altogether. Like I haven't done enough of that, you know, that stalking the idea thing. And I've just gone for the idea at the surface level. So I actually have to start again. You know, that it's like a script is beyond redemption. So that's like kind of the worst. Well, when it all comes together, when I actually understand what the play is about, you know, and when like the whole process is really playful, when I just feel like this sense of both complete freedom and also complete confidence that paradoxically that this is the right path, you know. So, you know, so I mean, the freedom to like do anything you want in the universe, but also like knowing it's going this way. So, which is, you know, also theater, isn't it? It's like that sense of the actors have absolute agency, the characters do, and, you know, free will, freedom, every choice, but also that the whole structure of the play is pushing them to one direction. So yeah, I guess that's the best bit. Oh, there is a lovely quote that I have up on my computer screen. It's from the Mahatma, the Indian epic. I think it says something like, you only have the right to your labor, not the fruits of your labor. So, which is like, so I have absolute, like, I can, like, that I have access to my writing at any time, like, so the process is within my control, but like what comes out is not in my control. So that helps me, so if I just keep on doing it, then that I take away the pressure of like, well, and then at the end of it, it's going to be like a 90-minute, like no interval play, that's going to be produced. So, so you just have to take away that pressure. You need to purge yourself of the need for external validation. I mean, that sounds really precious and, but and it's not even that I'm saying you're just writing for yourself, because no, you're always writing for an audience, but your audience might not be like mainstream theater going audience, might not be like theater gatekeeper audience. So, I think it's you can't write for them, so it's just you can't write for that validation, so I've never understood, when like a young writer comes to me and they're like, oh, like I'm giving myself 1 year, or like my parents are giving myself 1 year, see if I can make a go at it and succeed, and if not, I'm just going to get a proper job. And sometimes I'm like, well, 1 year, you're not even out of the garage yet, like the engine isn't even warm. I just feel like you just you just commit to it, and then not put a timeline on it, and don't expect any validation for a really long time, or maybe never. And the second thing comes from the first thing, which is that then you need to like build up both financial and emotional resilience. Like which is why I'm so against that. Like, I'm just going to like, give up everything, do it for a year, and then see if I can, make a living. Or if not, I'm just going to do something else. And like, no, you try to make it work financially, so, some people design websites, or like for years, I translated plays from Chinese to English to, just to keep afloat financially. And because that was something that I could do, like, kind of, without childcare and stuff. Whereas teaching, which is obviously the other big thing that playwrights do, you do need, like, you need to pay for childcare before you can go teach. And so, just I feel like if you're going on this path, then you have to think about like how you're gonna like, yeah, keep going financially, and then keep going emotionally. Emotionally is always about finding your tribe. I actually feel quite, I mean, I know there's a lot of like criticism of gatekeepers, that they're really hard to access, and whatever, they're like not responsive to writers. But sometimes, I look at these networking events, and like you see all these people like congregating on this poor person, and like, well, of course they're like hard to access. Like, it's really like, it's scary. And I just think it's so important. Like, it's probably more important to like make horizontal connections to your peers than it is to like, obviously looking up to an artistic director, because I feel like, if you want longevity in this industry, then you need to be part of a horizontal network of people whose work you really love, and that they love your work in return. So, sorry, I'm meandering. So that's 3 things. It wasn't 2 things. Yeah. So, but like, so the first would be, don't give yourself a deadline. Don't wait for that external validation before you call yourself a writer. Then the second one is the financial resilience, and the third is really the emotional resilience of finding your tribe. Looking horizontally. Not I guess not thinking that your career depends on banging on the door of an artistic director until they yield, so I think being a historian really helped with the writing in a few ways. I think because I found out quite early on what kind of historian I was, that has really informed the kind of writer I am. So, I mean, there are historians who think that all of history is, we call it theological, that it's like, it's going towards one goal. So Marxist historians would think, well, obviously, these stages of history are just all pushing us to the communist utopia. And, so there's the Whig theory of history where like every country is going through these stages and they're going to reach like liberal democracy at the end. And I found out very early on that I'm not that kind of historian, that I'm fascinated by contingency, which is used quite specifically in history to mean like that it just means like the randomness of like human decisions. It doesn't mean like I once used that like with some actors and they were like, oh, you're talking about like contingency plan, like what happens if there's a fire alarm? I'm like, no. So that or like accidents, like the outsized consequences of that. And a good example people always give is August 1914, when like apparently it was a really beautiful summer, and so crowds came out to like protest or demonstrate in Germany and Austria for war, and they pushed both the German emperor and the Austrian emperor to like declaring war, and that started World War One. And so a lot of historians have been like, well, obviously if it had been like, rainy, cold, blustery August, this war wouldn't have broken out at this time. And of course you can, as a historian, be like, oh, but there's so many other forces. It was heading inevitably towards war. And I don't think so. I mean, I think you could have said we're heading inexorably towards like nuclear destruction. But if you keep on like averting it, like the Bay of Pigs, it might never happen. So I think as a historian, I'm very interested in like that interplay between like huge world historical forces, like the Industrial Revolution, versus the weather on a particular day, versus the decision of like a certain individual who found themselves in like a certain position. And I find that as a playwright, I am exactly looking at that intersection as well. So where I was saying that what I loved about theater is that feeling of there's this almost a sense of inevitability. It's like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the fate, the knock of fate. But then the characters are always pushing against that because they have free will and they can make all decisions are theoretically open at any minute. So that's the overlap. Obviously sliding doors and then constellations have come at it from that idea, that at any point like life could be really different. But I know I tried to do something like that with Shanghai Dolls. Like, yeah, I had like 3 different versions of each scene in the first draft, and then because I was like, oh, what, they didn't have to like, one didn't have to like kill the other and torture them to death. And Indu was singing read the first draft, and she's like, Amy, get rid of that. It's so annoying. And I was like, but I want to convey that like it could have gone differently. And she said, yes, you contain all the possibilities within one scene. And I was like, okay, that's a lot harder to write. But yeah, I feel like because when, especially emerging writers, when they get tied into knots, it's usually because they're trying to write about this like horrible emotional trauma that happened to them, in their childhood, or their difficult mother or their difficult father, or they're trying to write about like climate change. And it's like, these things are very difficult to, well, the emotional trauma is obviously, it's I think it takes years, and it's probably not going to happen when you're 20 something that you're going to like be able to like find a form for that. And the climate change thing is so abstract. So it's that thing about coming at it sideways, so I'm like, I always make them write about food, because it's so like sensual, it's so immediate. Like almost everyone has a favorite dish. You know, if you felt like you had a really traumatic childhood and your mother was a villain, what was her favorite dish? Something like that. So that's like but then I'm Chinese, I'm Cantonese, so like I like eating. So I mean that's like a natural prompt for me.